During the 22nd century, the galaxy was plunged into an unexpected war against the one thing man has feared for centuries. This war would be against the demons of hell. Without knowing, mankind was on the brink of extinction as these brutal, fast and emotionless creatures tore through every living thing in their path, not only on Earth, but throughout the whole universe. But humanity wasn't the only race to suffer. Throughout the universe, hundreds of other races would fall victim to this terrifying foe, as they wiped them out and then claimed them for their own army. One race, older than humanity, was part of this war and was at the forefront of every battle. This race was known as the Argenta, formed on the distant planet of Argent. The Argenta were a proud warrior race who put tradition at the forefront of everything they did. They were technologically advanced and also were able to use abilities that many other races could only dream of using. Their elites, known as the Night Sentinels, were the best of the best within their society. These warriors feared nothing and were the ones who were at the front line of every battle against the demons of hell. But throughout the war, things for the Argenta and the Night Sentinels would only get worse, and their fate, like humanity's, would be getting close to extinction. But how did the Argenta come to be? Why were the Night Sentinels formed? What was their impact? And what happened to them during the brutal war against hell itself? Well, in today's video we look at the history of the Argenta and the Night Sentinels, and what happened to them during the unholy war of the 22nd century against the forces of hell itself. To understand the Night Sentinels, we must go back to their origins and the creation of their society. Millions of years ago, before humanity even existed on planet Earth, the world of Argent lay there uninhabited by anything, void of any life at all, much like Earth. However, suddenly that was to change as a huge metal crystal-like object known as the World Spear appeared from the depths of space and smashed into the planet, piercing all the way through the world from pole to pole. The planet from a distance would have looked like it was destroyed, and the lifeless planet would have looked like there was no chance it could ever grow into something special. But amazingly, soon after the impact, from the wound within the planet emerged the angelic creatures that were to be known as the Wraiths. These extremely powerful creatures spread throughout Argent, using their angelic powers to create an ecosystem all over the planet, seeding life into it. They first created a race of giants which were to be called the Ancestrals, and then went on to create the first men. Argent was now fully inhabited with life and resources to help them survive. The first men saw the power of these creatures. They had seen what they had done to this planet and how they were the Wraiths' creations. Almost immediately, the first men started worshipping the Wraiths and saw them rightly as their gods, labeling the events in their history as the Wraith Call, the forming of life on Argent. With this worship of the Wraiths, the first men were granted powers by the Wraiths and were told to defeat the Ancestrals to become the dominant species on Argent. The first men were of course victorious over the Ancestrals, and their new power only increased their love for the Wraiths. Because of this, after the battle against the giants, the first king of Argent, or Mero the Father, formed the order known as the Night Sentinels, a group of their best and loyalist warriors whose mission was to be the royal guard to the king, as well as be the protectors of the Wraith race. They were to put their life on the line to protect their gods, and nothing was to get in their way. Throughout those early years of Argent, the Argenta became proud of their customs. They almost became like space Vikings, super protective of their traditions, believed the Wraiths to be their one true god and the only god, and that their society was the best in all the universe because of their new powers and strength as a force. However, this would only get amplified in the next coming years as a new race was taking notice of this warrior world of Argent. In another far-off planet known as Urdak lived another race of creatures known as the Maykrs, a society of humanoid beings who were so advanced in technology to everyone else, they were immediately seen as godly beings to anyone who came into contact with them, with their golden armor and floating movement. The Maykrs had taken notice of this new warrior race of the Argenta, and were intrigued by their powers and potential. Because of this, the race of Maykrs sent envoys to Argent to find out more about their world, but also to make a deal with the race to help organise them more and almost use them as their personal bodyguards. The Maykrs offered the Argenta and the Night Sentinels a deal. They requested that the Argenta and Night Sentinels would worship the Maykrs and protect them like they did with the Wraiths, promoting them all over the system, and in return the Maykrs would grant them technology they had never seen before. They could bolster their forces and be one of the most powerful forces within the universe, with new armors and weapons. The people of Argent agreed to these terms, and the Argenta were given the strength in technology. The Night Sentinels served as the Maykrs' protectors, and the Order of the Daig, the order that originally worshipped the Wraiths, would go on to worship the Maykrs. However, this did not mean that the Argenta and the Order of the Daig would stop worshipping the Wraiths. Instead, they went on to see both of these races, of the Wraiths and the Maykrs, as their gods. It was also believed that if the Night Sentinels were to die protecting the Maykrs in battle, their souls would go on to live within the Maykr homeland of Urdact with all of their loved ones, almost like the Vikings and Valhalla. Whether this was actually true is highly unlikely and probably just a ploy to keep the Argenta under control, but regardless, it helped keep the Night Sentinels loyal to their new advanced gods. The Maykrs would go on to control the people of Argenta, and the Night Sentinels would continue to protect them as well as spread the word of the Maykrs all across the galaxy, as well as doing their tasks that they required. They also set up prisons for anyone who went against the rules of the land or who were traitorous to the Maykrs or their king or anyone at the higher end of society. Things were going well for the residents of Argent. However, the Khan Maykr, the leader of the Maykrs, was having a problem. Their race was dying out. Time was taking hold of them, ruining their physical appearance, and they were unable to create more Maykrs, meaning they were just running down the clock. The Khan Maykr also had visions of a man known only as the Destroyer or the Unholy One. The prophecy said that this man would be from Argent and would be the one to end the Maykr race once and for all. Because of this paranoia, the Khan Maykr told the king of Argenta at the time about this man, and with this information, the king tested everyone within Argent with the Maker's divinity machine to see if the Argenta's souls were pure, to make sure none of them were the so-called Unholy One or Destroyer. However, little did the Maykrs or the Argenta know that the Destroyer they were looking for was soon to arrive, and because of it, triggered the start of the war against Hell. Whilst all was well in Argent and the Maykrs were still testing the citizens in their divinity machine, a portal opened up outside the city walls and a lone man fell through it. Grabbing the outsider, the Night Sentinels brought him to the priests and the Khan Maykr for examination. His armour was simple compared to the Argenta's, but his helmet was extremely sturdy. The outsider kept screaming and shouting with rage in his voice, constantly saying the words rip and tear, whilst also mentioning creatures in their masses, creatures that the Maykrs and the Argenta had never heard of before, ones from a different dimension it seemed. Whilst this man looked crazy to everyone around him, preaching about killing everything and everyone, King Novik was intrigued by this outsider's physique and his abilities. He was taken to the Colosseum where prisoners were sent to fight each other for entertainment, and to also see who were the true warriors amongst them. The outsider proved himself within the Colosseum, amusing all the audiences as he shouted rip and tear all the time, and he easily defeated all the prisoners he was put up against. King Novik was impressed by this outsider's abilities and put him into the Night Sentinel training, seeing him as having full potential to be one of the best soldiers they had. This outsider was the first person not native to Argent to be even considered for the Night Sentinels, and after proving himself within the training, beat all the other trainees by a mile, the outsider became an official Night Sentinel and the first outsider to join the honourable ranks as well as the brotherhood within them, and quickly became one of their finest members. But almost immediately after this outsider arrived in Argent and joined the ranks of the Night Sentinels, another portal opened, but this time unleashed the forces this outsider had been speaking about throughout his time there. Thousands of demons poured into Argent, killing everything in their path. No one knew how these demons got into Argent, but it was clear they had to be stopped. This triggered the start of the Unholy Wars, the battle against Hell itself. The Maykrs and the Argenta teamed up to fight against these demons, but the battle at the start went terribly. Neither of the races had ever come up against an enemy like this, and their abilities were so different to anything they had seen before. Thousands died to these demons within Taras Nabad, the capital of Argent, and it became clear to the soldiers that these demons feared nothing. They did not even care about dying. They would just throw infinite amounts at the soldiers and had no care for how many they lost. Now on the back foot, the Night Sentinels needed to take the fight to the demons' homeland, the shores of hell itself. Here they went in with their full technological strength thanks to the Maykrs, and actually proved themselves when fighting, wiping out titans with their Atlan war machines. During this battle, the Argenta priests and the Maykrs became intrigued as to what was keeping these demons alive, and also given them their powers and abilities. After a few successful battles, some of the demons were kept as prisoners and were tortured by the priests. It was here where they discovered that the demons were holding an energy within them that could help heal them, resurrect them, power technology, and change a body's physical appearance to be more powerful in combat. The priests and the Khan Maykr were fascinated by this new power and realized they could turn it into an essence that could help solve some of their larger problems, especially for the Maykrs, who were said to be at this point a real dying race. The Night Sentinels, however, were not interested in this essence at all, stating it would go against all of their traditions and would be basically cheating their warrior abilities. But going forward, the priests and the Maykrs' obsession with this essence would end up leading to countless betrayals and eventually the downfall of the Night Sentinels and most of the Argenta. The war waged on and countless Night Sentinels were killed in the process, as well as millions of demons. But whilst the Night Sentinels were focused on the Unholy War, the Khan Maykr and the priests were still obsessing over this substance known as Argent energy, and needed to find a way to process it fast and more efficiently. Because of this, the Khan Maykr went to the Dark Lord himself within Hell and struck up a deal to extract the energy from the tortured souls within Hell. The Dark Lord agreed to the Khan Maykrs request, and in return the Khan Maykr allowed the forces of Hell to get access to other planets to increase their influence and power across the galaxies. This meant portals opened up into worlds such as Earth and saw the downfall of humanity as the demons overwhelmed their forces, killing everything in their path once again. The way Argent energy was being created in Hell was through giant towers that would torture individuals and extract their energy. It would cause incredible pain to those within Hell and would eventually destroy their soul so much that they lost all sense of humanity or whatever they were before this process, eventually turning them into just a husk, a meat suit that had no real purpose. But because of this energy of Hell, they could use this body to bolster their forces, turning everything living into demons, from humans to even flying creatures from other planets or universes. The worst thing about this, however, was that the spires were being run by slaves, more specifically Argenta slaves. The Maykrs had betrayed the ones who worshipped them and forced them to extract essences from their own kind. The Night Sentinels quickly discovered this huge betrayal as they fought within Hell. They could not believe that their own kind were being used as slaves and uncounted innocents had been put to torture just to benefit the Maykrs. The Night Sentinels went to report these findings, but it was no use. The report fell on deaf ears, and even some of the Night Sentinels refused to believe that their gods would do such a thing and refused to even question the actions of the Khan Maykr. Because of this new distrust of the Khan Maykr with some and what they had been doing with the people of the Argenta, this started a civil war within the world of Argent. The Night Sentinels stuck together to fight as normal, whereas those who believed the Khan Maykr rejected the Sentinels and their king, as well as putting aside their old beliefs, rejecting the Wraiths. During this war, countless soldiers would die again. However, this time, if the so-called traitorous Night Sentinels were to die fighting against the demons of Hell or the Khan Maykrs forces, these Sentinels would be tortured within Hell and their souls would be extracted, and once they were a husk, their bodies would be transferred into the form of a marauder, one of the most deadly ground forces Hell at their disposal, utilizing the weaponry of the Sentinels, but this time with the boost of Argent energy. The next betrayal came from the priests. The Night Sentinels wanted to bring the fight once again to Hell itself after returning to defend Taras Nabad once again. They set up a plan that they would all group together as one unifying force and overwhelm the demons of Hell, pushing them back back and maybe ending the war in the process. The Sentinels asked the priests to open up a portal to hell and they would all pour through, but little did the Sentinels know that the priests were also obsessed with this essence and had sided with the Khan Maykr. The priests opened up the portal for the Sentinels, but instead of sending them through as one large force, it scattered the Sentinels, meaning almost all of them were overwhelmed by the sheer mass of demons. The Sentinels were pretty much wiped out, but the betrayals didn't stop there. After this event, Night Sentinel Commander Valen was approached by the priest Deg Grav, who stated that his son had died in the battle and was going to be in eternal torment within hell. Valen couldn't deal with the nightmares of this scenario and was haunted day in, day out with the thoughts of his son's torture. The priest gave him one option. He said he could release his son if Valen could give the priest access to the angelic beings, the Wraiths, who were sealed away from harm. After countless days of suffering, Valen gave in and allowed the priest access to the Wraiths, meaning he had gone against everything he stood for and put the Wraiths in harm over his own feelings. The Wraiths were then dragged into hell and used to form the Well, an endless source of Argent energy. Valen's son was reborn as a reward. However, one more act of cruelty took place as the boy's heart was then used as the core of the Titan that was to be used by the Maykrs to destroy Earth once and for all, which was known as the Icon of Sin. Because of this ultimate betrayal, putting the Wraiths' lives at risk, Valen was labelled as the betrayer and shunned from Argent forever. Now betrayed by the Maykrs, the priests, as well as one of the Sentinel commanders, it was extremely desperate times for the Argenta, and it looked certain that their world, as well as others, were to be extinguished by Hell's forces. With almost all of the Sentinels dead and tortured within hell, it was looking like there was no coming back. The Unholy War looked almost lost, and there was almost nothing anyone could do. However, the outsider that joined the ranks of the Night Sentinels before the invasion was still alive and fighting better than anyone else. After retreating back to the Taras Nabad earlier before the Sentinels' final portal into hell, the man known as the Doom Guy fought alongside the other Last Stand Sentinels as they protected their city from a colossal Titan demon as well as other ground forces from hell. Things looked bad and it looked like certain doom, no pun intended. But before things got worse, a Seraphim Maker named Samur appeared to speak with the Doom Guy in secret. Samur was the aide to the Khan Maykr, but in this instant went against her orders and led the Doom Guy to the divinity machine, stating this process will help him. Whilst the machine was meant to purify those who stepped in, the machine mysteriously bestowed the Doom Guy with enormous power, strength and speed to match his anger and ferocity, turning him into a superhuman and partly divine in nature. Despite the remaining Sentinels now in hiding and the betrayer has been cast out unwilling to fight in the Unholy Wars, the war against the forces of hell still has one hope, and that is through the being once known as the Outlander and the Doom Guy, but now known thanks to the Seraphim Maker named Samur as the Doomslayer. With his help, he can unite the remaining Night Sentinels, free the Wraiths, kill the Maykrs, and end the war with Hell by taking out the final straw, that being the Dark Lord of Hell himself. And that is the story of the Argenta's origin and their fight against Hell. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, a like and sub would be much appreciated. If you want to leave a comment regarding the story of Doom or just a nice one about the video, that would be a big help as YouTube's mysterious algorithm seems to like that stuff, and I'd once again really appreciate it. If you like this video and want to support the channel, I'll leave all my relevant social media links below, as well as my Patreon link if you want to financially support this channel and get 1 day early access to my latest video. And speaking of Patreon, I'd like to thank my supporters real quick. Big thanks to our Big Fish, Duquesne23 and Rhino Head, our Sharks, JP, Connor and the AVP Man, and our 4 huge Megalodons, Sinus, Morgan Brazier, JJD896 and Whale Such Gaming. Also big thanks to our YouTube channel member, our Wise One Jambu, as well as all of my Twitch subs. All your support means the absolute world to me, and once again I cannot thank you enough. But that is all for now. I hope you enjoyed this look into the lore behind Doom, and I shall see you all in the next one. Cheers.